The screech of metal echoed through the corridors of the hospital ship Aegis. The ship, once a beacon of hope for wounded soldiers and civilians alike, was now a battlefield. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the once peaceful hum of the engines now sounded like a death knell. Outside the ship's reinforced walls, in the vast emptiness of space, a fleet of alien warships loomed. Shields are failing. We need to move, now. Captain Sarah Miles barked, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. Her mind raced, but her face was a mask of control. She wasn't just the captain, she was the lifeline of the Aegis and the 300 souls aboard. She gripped the edge of the command console, her knuckles turning white. The ship was already under attack. Alien ships, far too advanced to be anything but hostile, were tearing through their defenses. She glanced at the tactical officer, Lieutenant David Grant, whose face was pale with fear. "We've lost the forward shields, Captain," Grant said, his voice tight. "Hull integrity is at 70%. They're going to breach soon. We can't outrun them." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The Aegis was a hospital ship, not a war vessel. Its only purpose was to provide aid to the injured and offer a safe haven in the cold void of space. But now, it was nothing more than a sitting target. Her fingers danced over the controls, trying to access the ship's last line of defense, the emergency countermeasures. "Activate all decoy drones. Full power to the aft shields," Sarah ordered, her voice sharp with authority. "We'll buy ourselves some time." Grant nodded, his hands moving quickly over his console. But before the drones could launch, a blast from the alien ships hit the Aegis's port side, throwing the crew off balance. The entire ship groaned, the steel walls buckling under the impact. "Damage report," Sarah demanded. "Major hull breach in Sector 7. Life support failing." Grant shouted, his face contorting with panic. Sarah's mind raced. The Aegis was losing this fight fast, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The alien ships had weapons far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. She had no illusions left. This wasn't just a skirmish. It was an invasion. "Captain, they're boarding," yelled Lieutenant Maria Diaz from the communications console. "They're deploying troops to the lower levels. Seal the lower decks. Now," Sarah ordered. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was too late. The aliens were inside. The crew scrambled to activate emergency protocols, but the aliens' weapons were too advanced. The ship's defenses flickered and failed, one by one, as the invaders ripped through the Aegis like a hot knife through butter. Suddenly, a shrill alarm rang through the ship, signaling a hull breach in the medical bay. Sarah's stomach twisted. The medical bay, where her wounded soldiers were lying helpless, was the heart of the ship. If the aliens reached it, the human race would lose its last chance at survival. "We need to protect the medical bay," Sarah said, her voice unwavering despite the dread gnawing at her insides. "Lieutenant Grant, prepare the last of the armed drones. We're going down fighting." Grant hesitated, then nodded. "Aye, Captain." With a sense of grim determination, Sarah turned to face the viewport. Outside, the alien ships hung like menacing shadows against the backdrop of the stars. The Aegis was nothing more than a speck of humanity's last hope in a vast, uncaring universe. Sarah's thoughts flashed to her family. She hadn't spoken to her mother in over a year. Her children, would they ever see her again? Would anyone ever see Earth again? Her train of thought was interrupted by a sudden jolt. The ship shuddered, throwing everyone off balance. The lights flickered, and the emergency backup systems kicked in, casting the ship in an eerie, dim red glow. "Captain," shouted Diaz. "We've detected an unknown signal. It's coming from inside the alien ship." "A distress signal?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. It wasn't like the aliens to send signals, not unless. "No," Diaz responded, shaking her head. It's different. It's a message, but there's something off about it. Sarah's instincts flared. She didn't trust the signal. But right now, she had no choice but to investigate. Open a channel. Patch it through to the command center. The strange signal began to play. The words were garbled, distorted by an alien language that none of them could understand. But beneath the static, something was unmistakable. There was a pattern, something familiar. Then, the voice cut through the static. Humanity will fall. The word sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She knew that voice. It was the voice of an alien leader, one they had never encountered before. Humanity will fall, the voice repeated, this time clearer, more deliberate. Your fate is sealed. There is no escape. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a silence so thick it was almost tangible. The crew stared at the blank screen, struggling to process what they had just heard. Sarah felt a coldness creep into her chest. Her ship was under attack by an unknown alien force, and now this message. It was clear that the aliens weren't just after resources, they were after something far worse. Prepare for impact. Grant shouted. Brace yourselves. The crew barely had time to react as another explosion rocked the Aegis. This time, the impact was so powerful that the ship's gravity was momentarily lost. Crew members scrambled to stay anchored as the ship twisted and turned, the hull groaning under the pressure. Captain! Diaz shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. The aliens are boarding, again. This time, they're bringing something worse. It's not just soldiers. The warning had barely left her mouth when a new figure appeared on the view screen. A monstrous silhouette, more machine than alien, loomed in the distance. Its form was massive, humanoid, but covered in dark armor that glinted with an unnatural sheen. Their leader, Sarah muttered under her breath, her heart racing. The alien leader's ship loomed closer. It was unlike any vessel Sarah had ever seen. Dark and sleek, its shape was both menacing and elegant, a symbol of something far beyond human understanding. Captain, we need to act fast, Grant said, his voice tight with fear. They're too powerful. We won't last much longer. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She was too focused on the message. Humanity will fall. She had heard the message. Now, it was up to her to figure out what it meant, and how to stop it. She turned to her crew, a deep resolve settling over her. We fight, she said, her voice steady. We fight for every soul on this ship. We fight for Earth. With a grim nod, Grant prepared to launch the final defense protocols. But just as he was about to press the button, the ship's system flickered, and the lights dimmed once more. The Aegis was losing power, fast. Sarah clenched her fists. The battle was just beginning. But she wasn't about to give up. Not without a fight. Captain, Diaz said softly, there's another signal. It's coming from Earth. Sarah turned sharply. Could it be a message of hope? She looked at Diaz with a mixture of fear and hope. Put it through. The screen blinked to life once again, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The message wasn't from Earth. It was from someone, or something, far closer. The alien leader's voice echoed once more. It's already too late. Cliffhanger. Just as Sarah was about to give the order to fight back, the ship's systems completely shut down. Everything went dark. The crew was left in total silence, the alien ships closing in for the final strike. Sarah's last words hung in the air. Brace for impact. The Aegis was no longer a hospital ship. It had become a ghost ship, drifting aimlessly in space, its once lively halls now silent and cold. The crew, still reeling from the first devastating attack, was desperate for answers. The message, the voice of the alien leader, lingered in their minds, it's already too late. Captain Sarah Miles sat in the command center, her eyes fixed on the dark screen in front of her. The ship's systems were barely operational, flickering with sporadic power. The emergency lights cast a dull red hue across the room. Outside, the alien ships hovered like vultures, waiting for the moment to strike. The Aegis was crippled. The shields were gone. The weapons were useless. Yet, Sarah knew that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about strategy. And she wasn't ready to give up, not when humanity's future hung in the balance. "Captain," came Lieutenant Maria Diaz's voice, cutting through the silence. "We've lost communication with all other ships. Earth doesn't know what's happening." Sarah turned to face her. Diaz's expression was grim, but there was something else in her eyes, a flicker of something else. A spark of hope? "We can't rely on Earth right now," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We have to figure out how to survive on our own. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Diaz nodded, and for a moment, neither spoke. The weight of their situation was too heavy to put into words. The crew of the Aegis had no idea what kind of enemy they were up against, what kind of threat Earth was facing. And yet, the alien ships circling the Aegis didn't seem to be in any rush. They were waiting for something. "Captain," came a voice from the engineering deck. It was Lieutenant David Grant, his voice crackling through the comms. "We've managed to restore minimal power to the internal sensors. We're starting to get some readings, but nothing is making sense. There's something else out there. It's not just the alien fleet." "What do you mean?" Sarah's voice was sharp with curiosity. Grant's voice dropped lower. "It's hard to explain. The sensors are picking up strange readings, unexplained energy signatures, beyond the alien ships. And, there's something moving inside the ship." "Something?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of something?" "We don't know yet," Grant replied, sounding more unsettled. "But it's not just the aliens. There's something on board the Aegis, something we didn't detect before. It's alien, but not like anything we've seen. It's different." Sarah's mind raced. The aliens had already boarded. They were inside the ship. But now, there was something else. Something hiding. She stood up quickly, her chair scraping against the metal floor. "Everyone on high alert," Sarah ordered. "Prepare for another attack. I don't care if it's human or alien. Whatever it is, we fight." The crew scrambled, preparing for the worst. Sarah's pulse quickened. Every corner of the Aegis was now a potential threat, and no one knew who or what to trust. The Aegis was under siege, and its captain had to make a choice. But the truth was, she didn't know who the real enemy was. Hours later, the crew gathered in the command center once more. The Aegis had been drifting in space for what felt like an eternity, with nothing but the eerie silence and the distant hum of broken systems for company. Sarah glanced at her crew, every face lined with exhaustion, fear, and uncertainty. But they were still here. They were still fighting. Grant entered, his face pale. "Captain, we've identified the source of the readings. It's a life form. On the ship. But it's not moving like anything human. Could it be another alien?" Diaz asked, her voice tense. "It's possible," Grant replied, his tone heavy. "But whatever it is, it's using some kind of cloaking technology. We can't get a clear read on it." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Cloaking? Are you saying it's hiding?" "Not exactly," Grant explained. "It's moving in ways that don't make sense. We've tracked it to Deck 13, near the medical bay." "The medical bay?" Sarah's stomach twisted. The heart of the ship, the place where humanity's future depended on the ability to heal. The very place that had been the target of the first alien attack. "We can't let it get to the medical bay," Sarah said, her voice determined. "Take a team down there. We need to find out what this thing is. And make sure it doesn't destroy what's left of our ship. A small team of crew members, armed and ready, was assembled, and they moved cautiously toward Deck 13. The air was thick with tension as they made their way through the darkened corridors of the Aegis. The flickering lights cast long shadows, making every movement feel exaggerated, amplified. Sarah's heart beat louder in her chest with each step they took. Something was wrong. She could feel it. They reached the medical bay, and for a moment, there was silence. No alarms. No movement. Just the distant hum of the damaged systems. The doors to the medical bay were closed. Sarah hesitated, then signaled to her team. "Ready?" she whispered. The team nodded, gripping their weapons tightly. One of them reached for the door control. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the medical bay was empty. Everything was eerily still. Nothing moved. The only sound was the soft beeping of the emergency medical equipment. "Clear," one of the crew members called out, his voice trembling. Sarah exhaled. But her relief was short-lived. From the far corner of the room, something shifted. A figure appeared, tall, slender, and wrong. It was cloaked in shadows, its form barely visible. The crew froze, their weapons raised, their eyes wide with disbelief. The figure was humanoid, but its limbs were elongated, its features distorted. It moved in ways that defied physics, gliding across the room with a fluidity that made it seem almost unnatural. One of the crew members shouted in alarm and fired a shot. The figure vanished into thin air, reappearing on the opposite side of the room in an instant. "Get it!" Sarah shouted. The team opened fire, but the figure darted between them with unnatural speed. It was no longer a simple alien, it was something else, something that wasn't bound by the same rules that governed reality. "Captain." Grant's voice crackled through the comms. "It's not just attacking the crew, it's analyzing them. It's trying to learn us. We're its experiment." "What do you mean?" Sarah demanded, fear creeping into her voice. "It's scanning us," Grant said. "It's studying us." Before Sarah could respond, the cloaked figure lunged at one of the crew members, its elongated fingers wrapping around his neck with terrifying precision. The man gasped for breath, struggling against its grip. But it was no use. The figure's eyes glowed with an eerie light as it released its hold. The crew member crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Sarah's heart raced. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't just another alien invader, it was something far more dangerous. And it was learning from them. Adapting. Evolving. "Fall back," Sarah ordered, her voice fierce. "We need to get to the command center. Now." As the team retreated, the figure vanished once again, leaving only the still body of the crew member behind. The crew rushed to the command center, but the dread in their hearts was palpable. Whatever they were facing, it was beyond anything they had ever encountered. And the truth was, they had no idea what the next move should be. Cliffhanger. As Sarah entered the command center, the screen flickered to life. The alien leader's voice echoed again, but this time, it was different. It was distorted, as if coming from 1,000 different places at once. "You can't escape what you don't understand, Captain." The Aegis had become a trap. The crew had once thought of it as a sanctuary, a ship designed to protect the injured and offer respite in the chaos of space. Now, it was their cage. And inside it, an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, was hunting them one by one. It wasn't just the alien fleet outside, the real threat was something far worse. Captain Sarah Miles paced back and forth in the command center, her mind racing. The creature they had encountered in the medical bay was unlike anything they had faced before. It was not just an alien soldier, or even a scout, it was something more. Something that manipulated its form, its movements, its very essence to confuse and terrify. It wasn't merely attacking, they were being studied. Tested. "Captain, we've been able to isolate the creature's last location," Lieutenant David Grant said, his voice tinged with anxiety. "But the sensors are unreliable. We're not sure where it's hiding now." Sarah stopped pacing and turned to face him. Her face was hard, set in a mask of determination. "We need to find it. We need to understand what it wants." Grant nodded grimly. "We're trying to gather data on its behavior. It's been moving too erratically. We've never seen anything like it before." "You're telling me," Sarah muttered under her breath, rubbing her temples. The creature's swift, almost supernatural speed had left them all rattled. It wasn't bound by physics, and every attempt to trap it had failed. For all they knew, it could be anywhere on the ship, watching them, studying them, waiting for the moment to strike. "Any word from the other crew members?" Sarah asked, her tone softer now. Grant's eyes flickered with a hint of guilt. "We've lost 2 more. One was from engineering. The other, from the observation deck. They were both attacked without warning. No signs of struggle, no warning shots. Just, gone." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Every loss felt like a failure. She couldn't afford to let the fear creep in. She couldn't afford to let her crew see it. "I need everyone in position," she said firmly. "We need to stay together. Whatever this thing is, it thrives on division. We fight together, or we fall apart." Grant nodded. "I'll gather the teams." As he left, Sarah turned her attention back to the viewport. The alien fleet outside was still in position, unmoving. Their ships, sleek and ominous, were a constant reminder of the larger threat hovering just beyond the Aegis's crippled defenses. But what was worse than the alien ships was the creature inside. The creature that could not only tear them apart physically but mentally as well. Sarah's mind went back to the voice. The alien leader's voice had taunted them before. "You can't escape what you don't understand." It was a chilling declaration, one that hinted at a level of manipulation she couldn't quite comprehend. The voice had been too sure, too certain. It was as though the enemy knew they would fall, knew they would be driven mad by their inability to understand the true nature of the threat. Suddenly, a voice broke through her thoughts. "Captain," Lieutenant Maria Diaz's voice was frail but steady. "There's something you need to see." Sarah turned to her immediately. "What is it, Diaz?" "We've been monitoring the alien fleet." "They're moving," Diaz said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It looks like they're preparing to engage." Sarah's stomach tightened. The thought of the alien fleet attacking was terrifying enough, but if they were moving in, if they were preparing for something more, then they were running out of time. They needed answers, and they needed them now. She hurried to Diaz's station, eyes locked on the blinking radar. Sure enough, the alien ships had begun to shift. A formation was taking shape, one that looked purposeful. Sarah's mind raced. Why were they waiting? What were they planning? "Get me a communication link to the fleet commander," Sarah ordered, her voice commanding. Diaz nodded. "Trying, Captain. But the communication systems are still jammed. They're using some kind of signal disruptors." "Damn it," Sarah muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. She turned back to the viewport, her gaze fixed on the alien ships. What were they waiting for? As the minutes stretched on, Sarah felt a growing sense of unease. The creature inside the Aegis, the strange being they could not understand, was a mystery. But it was the aliens outside, their strategy, their intelligence, that frightened her the most. They weren't just fighting, they were planning. And they were waiting for something. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from the corridor, pulling Sarah from her thoughts. The sound of metal scraping against metal. Something, or someone, was coming. "Captain, I've got movement," Diaz said, her voice urgent. Near Deck 6. Shut down all non-essential systems, Sarah ordered immediately. Get the crew to the lower decks. We need to secure them, fast. Diaz worked quickly, flicking switches and typing commands into her station. Non-essential systems shutting down. Crew evacuation in process. But before Sarah could react further, a shrill scream pierced the air. The scream of one of her crew members. Lieutenant Grant. Sarah shouted as she bolted toward the exit. Get to the lower decks, now. The corridors were eerily silent as Sarah rushed toward the disturbance, her boots pounding against the metal floor. A few moments later, she reached Deck 6. What she saw there made her blood run cold. The crew member who had screamed lay crumpled on the floor, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. His eyes were wide with terror, and his mouth was open, as though trying to scream one last time. But there was no sound. He had been killed instantly, his body mangled and unrecognizable. The thing that had done this was near. Sarah could feel it in her bones. Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the hallway. There was no sign of the creature, but she knew it was close. She had to act fast. Get this body back to the med bay, she snapped at one of the nearby crew members. Everyone else, stay alert. As the crew worked to remove the body, Sarah turned back to the command center, her mind racing. The creature was playing with them. It wasn't just hunting, it was using them as pawns in a larger game. They had been reduced to nothing more than experiments, objects for its study. But what did it want? Why had it targeted the crew? Why not just destroy the Aegis entirely? The thoughts swirled in her mind as she reached the command center. As soon as she entered, she saw Diaz looking at the screen with wide eyes. Captain, Diaz said quietly, there's something you need to see. Sarah walked over to her and stared at the screen. What she saw sent a chill through her veins. On the display was a live feed from the outside of the ship, an image of the alien fleet. But it wasn't just the fleet. Something new had appeared. In the midst of the ships, a massive object had materialized. A ship larger than anything Sarah had ever seen. It was almost impossible to comprehend, its shape both angular and fluid, its surface covered in shifting patterns of energy. The sheer size of it made the rest of the fleet look like toys. That's the mothership, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. They're bringing it into position. Diaz nodded, her face pale. It's not just a warship. That's where the leader is. That's where the real threat is. And with that realization, Sarah knew they had just run out of time. Cliffhanger. Before Sarah could issue another command, the ship rocked violently, and the lights flickered. The alien fleet was attacking. This time, it wasn't just the Aegis that was at risk. It was the entire galaxy. The Aegis was shaking. The ship had endured countless blows, but this felt different, darker. The tremors were deeper, reverberating through the entire structure as if the ship itself were about to split apart. Sarah Miles gripped the edge of the command center console, her knuckles turning white. The crew around her scrambled, shouting commands, trying to maintain control in the face of an impending disaster. Outside, the alien fleet was moving in closer. The massive mothership had shifted its position, looming ominously in the distance, casting a shadow over the Aegis. Its sheer size dwarfed everything in sight. The rest of the fleet had already begun firing, their weapons slicing through the void with terrifying precision. Captain. Lieutenant Maria Diaz called, her voice strained. We've lost all power to the auxiliary systems. The shields are down. We're vulnerable. Sarah's pulse quickened. The reality of their situation hit her like a slap in the face. They were sitting ducks in open space. The alien ships, with their superior technology and strategic positioning, were playing with them, like a hunter toying with its prey. Status on the creature? Sarah demanded, turning to Lieutenant David Grant, who was manning the tactical station. Grant's face was grim. He didn't need to say anything. The look in his eyes told Sarah everything. The creature, whatever it was, hadn't shown up again. But it was still there. Watching them. The crew had found traces of its presence in the lower decks, faint, almost imperceptible signs that it had been moving through the ship. It wasn't gone. It was just waiting. Like everything else. "Captain," Grant said, breaking the silence, "I've managed to hack into the alien communications network. They're not just attacking us, they're sending a message." Sarah's breath caught. "A message? What does it say?" Grant's fingers flew across the console. The screen flickered before revealing an encrypted transmission. It was a voice, distorted and alien, but unmistakable in its malice. "You are nothing but ants. Your survival is meaningless. We will not stop until every last one of you is extinguished. Your planet will burn, and your species will be erased from the stars. You are nothing to us." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. It was the alien leader's voice again. But this time, there was no pretense of diplomacy, no negotiation. It was pure, unrelenting hatred. "They're not just attacking to conquer," Sarah whispered. "They're doing this for sport." Diaz swallowed hard. "What do we do, Captain? We can't survive this." Sarah's mind raced. The ship was crippled. The crew was scattered and disorganized. But there was one thing they still had: hope. It was a fragile thing, but as long as there was life, there was a chance. "We fight," Sarah said, her voice steady but fierce. "We do what we've always done. We adapt." Grant's eyes flickered with something, perhaps a spark of hope, perhaps just exhaustion. He nodded. "What's the plan, Captain?" "First, we need to find out what the aliens are really after. They're not just attacking the Aegis. They're after something. We need to know what that is before they wipe us out." "Do you think it's the creature?" Diaz asked. Sarah shook her head. "No. The creature is a distraction. It's testing us, studying us. But it's not the real threat." The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The aliens didn't care about the Aegis, it was just a pawn. They wanted something bigger. Something more important. "What if they're after Earth?" Diaz asked. "They've destroyed all the communication channels. If they get control of the Aegis." "They won't get control," Sarah cut her off. "Not if I can help it." But Sarah knew that she was running out of time. The aliens were drawing closer. The mothership was slowly positioning itself over the Aegis, and soon, it would be too late. "Captain, we've detected something," Grant said suddenly, his voice urgent. "It's on the ship. It's moving toward the core." "The core?" Sarah's eyes widened. "What's it after?" "I don't know," Grant replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "But it's going straight for the main reactor. If it reaches the core, it could trigger a chain reaction that will destroy the ship. Then we stop it," Sarah said firmly. "We stop it now." The crew scrambled into action, moving quickly through the narrow hallways of the Aegis. Sarah's mind raced, but she kept her focus on the task at hand. The alien creature, whatever it was, wasn't just trying to kill them. It was trying to destroy everything they had left. She reached the main reactor chamber with her team, her hand gripping the cool metal of the doorframe as they waited for the next move. "Get the doors open," Sarah commanded. One of the crew members stepped forward, working quickly to hack into the door's control system. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing the dimly lit interior of the reactor chamber. The air was thick with the smell of burning circuitry and heated metal. The hum of the reactor, once a constant in the ship, now sounded like a warning. Its usual steady rhythm was chaotic, disjointed. There, standing in the center of the room, was the creature. It was no longer cloaked. Its form was fully visible now, and it was even more terrifying than before. Its limbs were impossibly long, its skin a pale, translucent sheen that shimmered unnaturally in the low light. Its face was a grotesque amalgamation of human and insect features, its eyes black and endless, devoid of any emotion. It turned its head toward them as they entered, its movement fluid, almost too fast to follow. It seemed to study them for a moment, analyzing, calculating. Then, it lunged. The crew opened fire, but the creature dodged with ease, moving faster than the eye could follow. It struck out at one of the crew members, knocking him aside like a ragdoll. His weapon clattered to the floor, useless. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "Get the core locked down," she shouted, drawing her own weapon. The team rushed toward the control panel on the far side of the room, but the creature was faster. It was on them in an instant, slashing at one of the crew members with its long, sharp claws. Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't let the creature destroy the reactor. If it did, everything would be over. They had no other choice but to fight, to buy themselves enough time to secure the core. "Fire at the control panel," Sarah shouted to Grant, who was closest. "We need to lock the reactor down before it gets to the core." Grant nodded, his fingers moving rapidly across his console. A burst of energy shot from his weapon, striking the control panel. Sparks flew, and the entire reactor chamber rumbled as the lockdown protocol was engaged. The creature hissed, its eyes glowing with fury. It turned its attention toward Sarah, its inhuman form shifting, becoming a blur of motion. But Sarah was ready. She fired, the shot hitting the creature's chest. It recoiled, but it didn't stop. It wasn't alive in any conventional sense. It was something else, something they still didn't understand. But the shot had done something. The creature faltered, and for a moment, it seemed almost vulnerable. "Now!" Sarah shouted, giving her team the signal. They rushed forward, taking advantage of the creature's momentary weakness. Together, they pushed it back, forcing it toward the reactor's outer shield. They worked together, relying on each other's strength, focusing on survival. The creature let out a horrifying screech, but it was too late. With a final push, they managed to trap it within the force field that surrounded the reactor's core. The ship shook violently again, and the lights flickered, but for now, the core was secure. The creature was contained. Sarah took a deep breath, sweat pouring down her face. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The mothership was still out there. And whatever this creature was, it was only one part of the larger threat. Cliffhanger. Before Sarah could even process their victory, the comms crackled to life. "Captain Miles," came the voice of the alien leader, distorted and cold. "You may have won this round, but you are already too late. Your planet will burn. Earth is already ours." Sarah Miles stood at the command center of the Aegis, her eyes locked on the blinking console before her. The ship trembled once again, as though the universe itself was protesting their struggle. The alien fleet outside had only grown in number, their presence hanging over the Aegis like a death sentence. Despite their success in securing the reactor and containing the alien creature, the situation was far from over. And the chilling voice that had crackled through the communications just moments ago proved that. "You may have won this round, but you are already too late. Your planet will burn. Earth is already ours." The words of the alien leader echoed in Sarah's mind. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she gripped the edge of the console. She had to act quickly, but the question remained, what could they possibly do? The Aegis was crippled, its power systems failing, its crew battered and broken, and the alien fleet poised to annihilate them. Earth was already in their sights, and the clock was ticking. "We need a plan, Captain," Lieutenant Grant's voice broke through her thoughts, his tone strained. He was standing at the tactical station, his eyes glued to the screens, watching as the alien ships closed in. Their formation was tighter now, and they were moving in perfect synchronization, like a well-oiled machine. "I know, David," Sarah replied, her voice tight. "We have to find a way to stop them. But we're running out of time. We need a way to strike back, something they won't expect." Grant hesitated, his eyes flickering toward the viewport. "The mothership. That's their command center. If we take it down, we might stand a chance. But we can't get close enough. We don't have the firepower." Sarah's mind raced. The mothership. It was massive, far larger than anything they had ever encountered. Destroying it would cripple the entire alien fleet, but it was heavily shielded. No direct attack from the Aegis would make a dent. They needed something else. They needed leverage. What if we could force them to come to us? Sarah muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Grant looked up, confusion etched across his face. "What do you mean?" "We have to create a diversion. Something that will lure them in. We need them to focus on us, to pull some of their fleet away from the mothership. We have to give them something worth chasing." Sarah's mind was working now, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fit together. "Something worth chasing?" Grant repeated, his eyebrows furrowing. "You're not thinking about." "I am," Sarah said, her voice steely. "I'm thinking about the Aegis. It's crippled, but it's still here. We can use it. We'll make the Aegis look like a prize, a target that they won't be able to resist." "But the mothership," Grant started, but Sarah cut him off. "I'm not saying we go after the mothership right now. We need to buy time, to create an opening. The mothership is their nerve center. If we can distract them long enough, we can find a way to cripple it." Grant didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "I'll start working on a plan to make the Aegis more of a target." "Good," Sarah said, her mind still spinning with ideas. They had to do something before the alien fleet closed in for the final strike. There was no time to waste. The plan. The crew moved swiftly to carry out Sarah's plan. The first step was to rewire the remaining weapon systems on the Aegis, making them look like a last-ditch effort to escape. The ship's engines were malfunctioning, but with careful calibration, they could still produce enough energy for a powerful burst of firepower. The ship would be positioned in such a way that it looked like it was desperately trying to flee from the alien fleet. Grant worked with the engineering team, recalibrating the weapon systems and adjusting the internal sensors to ensure the ship appeared more dangerous than it was. The hope was that the aliens would see the Aegis as an easy target, but one that had the potential to do damage if provoked. It wasn't perfect, but it was their best shot. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Diaz and a few others went through the lower decks, securing any remaining crew members and ensuring the ship's communication systems were functioning enough to relay signals to the outside. They would need to be able to communicate with any reinforcements, should they come. Sarah moved to the bridge, overseeing the final steps of the plan. As she watched the crew scramble, a sense of resolve settled over her. She wasn't just fighting for her crew anymore. She was fighting for Earth. The clock was ticking, and every second counted. "Captain," Grant's voice came through her comms. "We're ready. The Aegis is prepped to act as bait. It'll give the alien fleet the illusion that we're trying to escape." Sarah nodded. "Good. Initiate the sequence. We need them focused on us, not on Earth." Grant's voice crackled in response. "Sequence initiated. Stand by." The confrontation. As the Aegis activated its modified weapon system, a series of bright, erratic bursts of energy flashed from the ship's side. The alien fleet immediately noticed, and their ships began to reposition, moving toward the Aegis with deadly intent. But Sarah was already 2 steps ahead. "Now," she shouted, and with that, the Aegis fired its final flare of false desperation, a brilliant, chaotic explosion of energy that lit up the void like a star. The alien ships closed in, their weapons aimed at the seemingly vulnerable Aegis. But what they didn't realize was that this was all part of the trap. While the fleet focused on the Aegis, Sarah had ordered the last remaining combat drones to deploy, small, nimble craft that could slip past the alien fleet and deliver a devastating blow to the mothership. The drones flew in like a swarm of hornets, weaving through the alien ships. The enemy responded with defensive fire, but it was too late. The drones had already found their target, the heart of the alien fleet. The mothership. The drones deployed their payloads, explosive charges designed to penetrate the ship's advanced shields. The explosions were not enough to destroy the mothership, but they were enough to send shockwaves through the alien fleet, creating chaos and confusion. The shields flickered, the ship's systems were thrown into disarray, and for a brief moment, the alien forces were vulnerable. It was the opening Sarah had been waiting for. "Now's our chance," she shouted. "All remaining fighters, move in." The Aegis launched its fighters, sending them into the heart of the alien fleet. The battle had turned from a desperate retreat to an all-out assault. The once overwhelming alien force was now scattered, disorganized. The tide had shifted. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Sarah allowed herself a small breath of relief. But she knew it wouldn't last. The mothership was still intact. The alien leader was still alive. And the final strike was yet to come. The final battle. The battle raged on. Alien fighters swarmed the Aegis, their laser cannons flashing like shooting stars in the darkness of space. The crew fought back with everything they had left, using every remaining weapon, every last bit of fuel in the ship's engines. But Sarah knew the true test was still ahead. She needed to get to the mothership, to the alien leader. That was where the real power lay. The battle for Earth was about to come to a head. As the Aegis shook under the barrage of enemy fire, Sarah's eyes locked onto the viewport. The mothership loomed ahead, its immense form casting a shadow over the battlefield. It was time. "Grant, get us into position," Sarah barked. "We're going straight for the heart of their fleet." "But the ship's barely holding together, Captain," Grant protested. "We don't have a choice, David," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We either take them down now, or we lose everything." The Aegis lurched forward, moving toward the mothership at breakneck speed. The alien fighters followed, but they couldn't match the Aegis's sudden speed. For a moment, it seemed as though the Aegis might escape the encirclement, but then the mothership responded, unleashing a torrent of firepower. The Aegis rocked violently, alarms blaring as the shields flickered and died. But Sarah held on, her resolve unshaken. "We're almost there," she shouted to her crew. And then, as the ship surged toward the mothership, it happened. Cliffhanger. A massive explosion erupted from the Aegis's main engine room. The ship trembled one last time. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The explosion hadn't come from the alien fleet. It had come from within the Aegis. The Aegis shuddered violently as the explosion rippled through its core. Sparks flew from the consoles, and alarms blared with increasing intensity. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she clung to the captain's chair. The ship's systems flickered, and for a moment, it felt as though the universe had paused. She could see the chaos unfolding around her, crew members scrambling, trying to assess damage, trying to keep the ship from falling apart. "Report." Sarah's voice cut through the din, sharp and commanding. "Engine failure in the lower decks," Lieutenant Grant shouted over the comms. The explosion came from the reactor core. "We're losing power fast, Captain." Sarah's mind raced. The Aegis was their only chance to stop the alien fleet. Without it, Earth had no hope of surviving. She gritted her teeth, trying to think, trying to make sense of the situation. But there was no time to dwell. The alien fleet was still pressing in, and they were only moments away from delivering the final blow. "Can we restore power?" Sarah demanded, her eyes scanning the control panels in front of her. "We're trying, but the damage is extensive," Grant replied. "It'll take too long. The Aegis can't hold out much longer." "Get us as close to the mothership as possible," Sarah ordered, her voice hard with determination. "We're not running. We're not giving up." Desperation. The ship lurched again, and the whole crew felt it. The Aegis was barely moving. The engine sputtered and groaned as they struggled to stay online. The alien fleet, now regrouped and furious, had begun closing in for the kill. Sarah could hear the desperate calls of her crew over the comms as they fought to stabilize the ship. The fighters had been deployed, but there were just too many enemy ships. Their numbers were overwhelming, their precision deadly. It felt as though they were surrounded on all sides. "We can't hold them off much longer, Captain," shouted Lieutenant Diaz from the lower decks, her voice trembling with fear. "The blast from the reactor has taken out most of our shields. We're sitting ducks." Sarah clenched her fists. She had to keep it together, keep everyone focused. The Aegis was falling apart, but she couldn't let her crew see the fear she felt. She had to push through, for Earth, for humanity. "Do we have any weapons left?" Sarah asked, turning to Grant, who was still stationed at the tactical console. "We've got enough for one final shot," he said grimly. "But it won't be enough to take down the mothership. It'll barely put a dent in it." "Then we'll make it count," Sarah replied. "Give me everything you've got." The final approach. The Aegis limped forward, its damaged hull scraping against the vast emptiness of space as the alien fleet closed in. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. Yet, Sarah had a plan, an impossible plan. She would get them close enough to the mothership. She would give her crew the opportunity to strike. Aboard the Aegis, there was no room for doubt. The crew worked in unison, each member doing their part to keep the ship alive for just a few more moments. Sarah felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision she made in these final minutes would determine whether Earth survived or fell. "Captain, we're within range of the mothership," Grant called out. "I'm locking on the targeting system." "Do it," Sarah ordered. "We don't have time for hesitation." The ship's weapons powered up, the last remaining energy coursing through the system, ready to fire one final shot. The targeting system beeped, locking onto the mothership's weak point, the bridge. It was their only chance. The Aegis trembled again as alien fire rained down upon it. The crew could feel the ship's systems failing. There was no more room for error. It was now or never. "Firing," Grant announced, his voice tight with tension. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the Aegis's cannon, streaking toward the mothership. The shot collided with the alien ship's shields, a momentary flash of energy that sent ripples through space. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to freeze. But then, nothing. The shields held. The mothership's massive form loomed ahead, untouched, invulnerable. "Impossible," Grant muttered in disbelief. The shot didn't even faze them. Sarah's heart sank. They had failed. The mothership remained intact, its shields impervious. The alien fleet was closing in, and the Aegis was dying. They had given everything, and it wasn't enough. "We're out of time," Grant said softly, almost to himself. But Sarah wasn't done. She refused to give up. "We're not done yet," she said fiercely, her voice cutting through the gloom. "We're going to board that ship. We're going to fight them up close." Grant looked at her, incredulous. "Captain, we're barely holding on. We can't board that thing. It's suicide." Sarah met his gaze. "We have no choice. I'll lead the charge. Get the team ready." The boarding. The crew of the Aegis had been through hell. Their ship was dying. They were surrounded. And yet, they prepared to board the mothership, knowing full well that this was their final mission, their final stand. Sarah could see it in their eyes. No one was backing down. Not while Earth was at stake. The boarding pods were hastily prepared, weapons checked, and everyone knew what they had to do. This would be a one-way trip. There was no turning back. But if they didn't take action now, Earth would fall. We go in fast, we hit hard, and we don't stop until that leader is dead, Sarah said as she addressed the team. We do this together. There was a moment of silence. Then, Lieutenant Grant nodded, his jaw set with determination. Ready, Captain. Let's finish this. The infiltration. The boarding pods shot through space, launching toward the alien mothership. The crew inside was silent, the tension palpable. Sarah's mind was a whirl of strategies, contingency plans, and the heavy weight of what they were about to do. The Aegis was a wreck. The alien fleet was closing in. This was their only shot. The pod slammed into the surface of the mothership, clinging to its hull with magnetic locks. The air inside the pod was thick with anticipation. Sarah's hand rested on the handle of her pulse rifle, the familiar weight grounding her in the moment. The door opened with a hiss, and the crew poured out, weapons raised, ready for whatever lay ahead. They moved swiftly, navigating the twisting, metallic corridors of the alien ship. The walls were cold, alien symbols etched into the surfaces. The air was thick with the scent of technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Every step was a risk. Every corner could hide an enemy. But there was no turning back. Cliffhanger. The crew reached the core of the mothership, the bridge. The alien leader was waiting, standing tall in front of a wall of holographic controls. Its eyes glowed with a terrifying intensity, an expression of cold calculation on its face. "Welcome," the alien leader said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "I've been expecting you." Before anyone could react, the chamber doors slammed shut with a deafening clang. The entire room began to shift, a high-pitched whine filling the air. The walls closed in. The floor trembled. The battle for Earth was about to reach its final moment.